Imagine, just for a second, being born into a world where your entire future is totally locked in the exact second you take your first breath. Like if your parents were poor, you were destined to stay poor. No way around it. And if they were rich, you were guaranteed to stay rich. Today, we're tracing the creation of the middle class, a group of people that honestly didn't even exist for 99% of human history. We're going to see exactly how they transformed into the single most powerful economic force the world has ever seen. It's kind of wild to think about today, right? What if the middle class just never existed? But for most of human history, that was reality. The whole idea that an average person could just decide to work hard, buy a house, get a car, and retire comfortably, that was completely, hopelessly unimaginable. You were literally trapped by your birth status. And the reason was simple. There was no middle class. It just wasn't a thing. You were either sitting at the absolute top or struggling at the very bottom. So let's rewind a bit and set the scene with our first major era, a world with basically two classes, which was the feudal reality. Look at this absolute contrast here. On one hand, you had kings and wealthy landowners hoarding pretty much all the wealth and power. And on the other side, poor laborers, ordinary people working these grueling, backbreaking hours literally just to survive until tomorrow. If your dad was a farmer, you became a farmer. Blacksmith's son, you're a blacksmith. There was zero economic mobility. Society was completely locked in place. But then, the entire world gets turned completely upside down. We enter the industrial job revolution and this massive great shift. History is about to hit the accelerator here. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, this huge technological wave starts sweeping across Europe and later the US. And it happens so fast. We go from this quiet agricultural life to suddenly, boom, factories are popping up everywhere. Machines are drastically boosting productivity, and railroads are suddenly connecting all these isolated towns. Because of this, for the very first time in human history, millions of people packed up, left their farms, and poured right into the cities looking for opportunity. It was mass urbanization on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And this mass migration changed the whole game. Because suddenly, factories needed more than just floor laborers, right? They needed managers to actually run the place. Businesses were booming and needed bank clerks to handle the massive influx of money. Governments suddenly had to hire administrators just to manage these exploding cities. Plus, you had a huge demand for highly skilled workers. Basically, society suddenly required an entirely new group of people. This wasn't just lords and laborers anymore. This was the birth of a brand new class of workers who actually had stable, regular incomes. As those industries expanded, this new class slowly grew. But to see when it truly exploded into a massive global phenomenon, we've got to jump forward to the 20th century. The Golden Age begins, driven by the huge post-WW2 boom. Now, World War II devastated a lot of the globe, but countries like the US emerged with these incredibly strong, hyper-productive industries. Imagine a massive factory that spent years churning out heavy military tanks, suddenly flipping a switch to mass-produce everyday stuff. We're talking automobiles, refrigerators, televisions, washing machines. These were things that used to be exclusive luxuries for the ultra-rich, but now they're rolling off assembly lines right into the homes of ordinary families. At the exact same time, governments were pouring massive amounts of money into infrastructure, building out highways, expanding schools, and finally making universities accessible to the masses. All this explosive economic growth and job creation culminated in something we all know, the American dream. Wages were rising right alongside soaring productivity. Just think about how incredible this was compared to today. A single income could suddenly support a brand new home out in the growing suburbs, feed a whole family, and still have money left over to put away for college and retirement. For millions of people, this wasn't just a fantasy. It was reality. They firmly believed and saw with their own eyes that each generation was guaranteed to live a better, more prosperous life than the one before it. So how exactly did this growth become so incredibly dominant? Well, let's look at how they became the absolute engine of modern economies. Through the power of the masses. You see, the middle class didn't become powerful just because they were making a bit more money. They became powerful because of their sheer numbers, millions of them. Think about it like this. A single billionaire, no matter how rich they are, can only buy so many cars, right? They only need so many houses, or maybe a couple of TVs. But when you have millions of middle-class families buying groceries every single day, purchasing homes, taking vacations, starting local businesses, and paying taxes, that creates an absolute tsunami of economic activity. It created this massive, unstoppable flywheel effect. Economic growth fueled insane job creation. Those new jobs strengthened the middle class by giving them reliable incomes. And what did they do with that money? They spent it, which fed right back into creating even more economic growth. Businesses totally depended on middle-class consumers. Governments relied on middle-class taxpayers. Politicians literally couldn't win without middle-class voters. They essentially became the powerful beating heart of modern capitalism. And as they grew in power, they completely transformed the society around them, especially when it came to education. Parents demanded better opportunities for their kids, which sparked a massive surge in university enrollment. Education essentially became your golden ticket to lifelong stability. You get a degree that leads to a higher-paying job, and that job offers long-term security. Almost overnight, the middle class was filled with teachers, engineers, accountants, nurses. These professions became the solid pillars of this new, thriving society. But there's actually a secondary, kind of hidden secret to their massive influence: wealth through asset ownership. They were literally building the future. You see, the middle class went from just earning a paycheck to actively multiplying their wealth. They started buying assets. Let's break this down a bit. A family buying a modest home in the 1970s often saw its value absolutely skyrocket over the decades, which created immense generational wealth. Stocks and retirement accounts meant everyday workers were directly cashing in on long-term corporate growth. And small businesses created this incredible localized wealth. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were building serious long-term financial security for their kids. This wealth accumulation expanded their influence so much that by the late 20th century, economists came to a sweeping consensus. They viewed a strong middle class as the absolute essential ingredient for a healthy country. Nations with large middle classes had significantly greater stability, robust spending, and the highest living standards anywhere in the world. As this quote hits the nail on the head, they truly became the foundation upon which modern societies were built. But as we all know, no golden age lasts forever. Let's talk about the cracks in the foundation, which sets up our story for part 2. While the middle class was riding high, reaching these unprecedented peaks, a silent disruption was already brewing. Forces like rapid globalization, the rise of automation, skyrocketing housing costs, and mounting heavy debt were quietly gathering strength right beneath the surface. They were preparing to challenge the very foundation of all this prosperity. So the story of the middle class isn't just about how it triumphantly rose up. It's about a looming collapse. How exactly did the most powerful economic engine in human history begin to stall out? And more importantly, are you at risk of falling out of it? Well, that is a story for part 2. You know, you're doing everything right. You studied hard, you got the degree, you landed the job, and you're putting in the hours. By every traditional metric of success that society taught us, you should absolutely be thriving right now. You should be building wealth. But instead, it feels like you're running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up while the finish line gets pushed further and further away. We are living through an era of profound economic whiplash, where the fundamental math of survival has been quietly rewritten while nobody was looking. So why do so many of us feel poorer, even when we're earning more money than ever before? It's really the central, agonizing paradox of our modern economy. I want you to just let that question sink in for a second. You might be earning a salary right now that would have made your parents ecstatic at your age. You're bringing in more dollars, working longer hours, and optimizing every part of your life. Yet somehow, true financial security just feels like a mirage. You're working so much harder, but you're falling behind. The foundational markers of success have totally vanished. That old expectation of a stable job, a home with a white picket fence, a reliable car, and a secure retirement, well, that's been completely replaced by a pretty chilling modern reality. We are now navigating a landscape defined by indefinite renting, crushing debt burdens, and this quiet, constant hum of job anxiety. To understand exactly what went wrong here, we have to pull back the curtain on 4 powerful, systematic economic forces that are quietly reshaping your life. Let's look at the first force, the silent wealth killer, inflation's invisible toll on purchasing power. Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine you walk into your annual performance review. You've hit all your KPIs, you've stayed late, and your manager hands you a piece of paper with a 5% salary increase. It's a huge emotional high, right? You celebrate. It feels like a definitive victory, a real validation of all your hard work. You are, quite literally, making more money today than you were yesterday. It feels exactly like progress. But here is the absolute gut punch. While you were busy celebrating that 5% raise, the underlying machinery of the economy was moving against you. What happens when the core costs of simply existing outpaced your hard-earned raise? Over the last few years, we've seen the price of basic groceries explode. We've seen car insurance premiums spike by 20% in a single year. Gas, utilities, healthcare. If the baseline cost of your life rises by 7%, your 5% raise is just an illusion. You are mathematically moving backward. You see, inflation isn't just that frustrating sticker shock you get at the grocery store. It's an invisible tax. It's a silent force actively draining your bank account while you sleep. It slowly and methodically reduces your purchasing power, just bleeding out your ability to actually save anything. You are earning more on paper, yes, for sure, but you're affording less in reality. It's a relentless squeeze on the modern budget, ensuring that your surplus cash vanishes before you can ever even think about investing it. Now for the second force, the housing asset divide, the changing math of the American dream. For a century, the ultimate wealth builder for the average person was not some complex stock portfolio. It was home ownership. But that engine has fundamentally broken down. For past generations, buying a house cost roughly 3 or 4 times their annual salary. It took discipline, sure, but it was an achievable milestone. Today, that exact same modest house might cost 8, 10, or in many major cities, an astonishing 15 times an annual salary. The sheer impossibility of this math is just staggering. Homes have outpaced incomes so aggressively that for millions of young workers, simply saving for a down payment is practically a mathematical fantasy. We are literally witnessing the rapid creation of a stark societal divide. It's a modern caste system based entirely on assets. On one side, you have the asset owners. Their net worth explodes upward, generating wealth while they sleep simply by existing in a home that appreciates in value. On the flip side, you have an entire generation of renters. They are completely locked out of this wealth-building engine, burning cash every single month just to keep a roof over their heads, terrified by the looming threat of the next lease renewal, and building absolutely zero equity. Which brings us to force number 3, the modern debt trap, borrowing against the future. Previous generations used debt sparingly, almost exclusively as a tool to acquire a major asset like a mortgage. Today, borrowing has basically become a life sentence, required simply to participate in society. Americans are now sitting on a terrifying mountain of over $17 trillion in consumer debt. Student loans, credit cards, auto loans with staggering interest rates, personal loans, devastating medical debt. A young graduate today enters the workforce already owing tens of thousands of dollars. They start the race of adult life heavily chained down, deep in the red, before the starting gun even fires. And the mechanics of this trap are brutal. Picture your income as a stream of water. Every single monthly debt payment you make is a massive leak in those pipes. That is money that could have been invested. It could have been compounding. It could have been buying your freedom. Instead, every dollar you pay in interest is a dollar stolen directly from your future self. Instead of your money working for your future, you're forced to spend decades of your life laboring just to pay off the past. Let's look at the fourth force, AI and automation anxiety, the great unknown of knowledge work. Now, we know that technological shifts are a normal part of human history. We survived the steam engine transforming the fields. We survived the factory line transforming manufacturing. We survived the computer revolutionizing the physical office. But this current transition, it's entirely different. Artificial intelligence is targeting cognitive automation. It is coming for the mind. It's transforming the very knowledge work that the middle class was told to rely on for absolute safety. Think about the bitter irony here. The accountants, the analysts, the writers, the administrative workers, these were the safe careers. These were the exact professions millions of people took on that crushing student loan debt to secure in the first place. And now, almost overnight, AI is beginning to automate the tasks we once thought were uniquely, undeniably human. While new industries will eventually emerge, the sheer violent speed of this transition has introduced a deep, paralyzing uncertainty into the white-collar world. So let's bring it all together. Part 5. The Invisible Trap. How these four forces collide.
The true danger isn't any single one of these factors in isolation. It's the devastating way they interlock. It's a perfect storm. Inflation violently starves your ability to save. Because you cannot save, housing permanently locks you out. Because you're locked out and costs are constantly rising, debt tightly chains you down just to survive day to day. And all the while, AI actively threatens the very foundation of your income. The trap snaps completely shut. They reinforce one another perfectly.
The psychological toll of this modern grind is profound. When the future feels this violently unstable, human nature takes over. Society fundamentally changes. We're seeing birth rates plummet worldwide. We're seeing the massive rise of the dink lifestyle, double income, no kids, and it's not always by choice, but out of sheer financial necessity. People are delaying life, buying homes, starting businesses, getting married, having children. The foundational building blocks of a healthy society are being put on hold indefinitely, simply because the economic ground beneath our feet feels entirely unstable.
Finally, Part 6. The Future of Wealth. Changing Roles for a Changing World.
You know, the biggest question isn't whether the middle class will completely vanish. Millions will still carve out incredible wealth and successful lives. But the rules of the game have undeniably changed. The path to entry is now highly complicated, ferociously competitive, and far more expensive. Blindly following the old blueprint is a recipe for financial ruin. Adaptability, deep financial education, and owning assets are no longer just optional. They are a matter of survival. The middle class built the modern world. The question now is whether it can adapt fast enough to survive the future.